Firebird, Western European. Okay. Once upon a time, once before a time, once under a time, and once before a time was captured by people and put into clocks. At that time when there was still magic on the planet, and God and the angels could walk around here more freely, in that time there was a king. And the king had 3 sons. And the king lived in a castle, as kings do. And the castle was a huge castle. It had rooms for everything. There were rooms for the king, there were rooms for his sons, there were rooms for visitors, there were rooms for his courtiers, there were rooms for his soldiers, rooms for his horses. And there were rooms for eating, rooms for sleeping, and rooms to just sit and look out at the kingdom. And in the center of the castle, there was a courtyard. In the courtyard, there was a garden. And in the center of that garden, there was a tree. There was an apple tree. But it wasn't an ordinary apple tree. It grew golden apples. They were gold and flaming, and their beauty took your breath away. And they weren't apples for eating. They were apples to be looked at, to be admired. And sometimes the king and his son would touch the apples gently and just massage them. And they would look at these apples, but the apples were counted. And every night before he went to sleep, the king would carefully count the apples and note in a ledger how many apples there were. And one night when he counted the apples, there was one missing. And the king became very agitated, and he immediately called everyone together and his 3 sons. And he said, someone has stolen an apple. And immediately his oldest son came forward and said, Father, I will keep watch. I will keep watch tonight. It's obviously a thief who comes at night. And I will keep watch tonight, and I swear as your son, on oath, no one will ever steal an apple from you again. So that night, he took a blanket, and he sat by a tree. And all night, he sat, and his eyes scanned the horizon, back and forth, and nothing happened. And just before dawn, he was overcome with sleep. And his eyelids fell just for several minutes. When he woke up, the dark was just giving way to light, and he counted the apples, and there was one missing. And the king was again agitated, and he called his court together and his sons. And the second son came forward, and he says, Father, obviously your older son has failed you. He said, give me the permission. I will watch tonight, and I promise you an oath, as your son, no apple will ever disappear from your tree again. So he took a blanket, and that night he sat under the tree, and all night he watched, and his eyes scanned. But his eyes became heavy, and just towards morning, he fell asleep just for a few minutes. When he woke up, another apple was missing. And the father was agitated, and he began to become very upset. He said, somebody is stealing his apples. And then his youngest son, the youngest prince, came forward and said, Father, let me watch. Obviously, my 2 brothers have failed, but I won't fail. I swear the oath as your son, I will watch, and no apple will disappear tonight. And the father said, no. He said, of all my sons, you're the least reliable, and you're too young. I won't give you the permission. But he begged and pleaded, and finally the father, but reluctantly, gave him permission to sit by the tree. So he sat with a blanket all night. His eyes were surveying back and forth. And just towards morning, his eyes became very heavy. But in order to stay awake, he took tiny sticks and he put them into his eyelids that they were impossible to close. And then just as the darkness was giving way to light, he saw a great flame as if a ball of fire, but more gold than fire. And he realized it was the great Firebird. And the Firebird came and plucked an apple in its mouth. He took his arrow and he shot straight into the breast of the Firebird, and a single feather fell to the ground, and the Firebird flew off with the apple. And he picked up the feather, and he realized that this feather is the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his whole life. It was flaming gold. That's something he had never seen before in his life, and he realized this feather was truly, truly valuable. And he took it to his father, and they took it to the court, and they examined the feather and its beauty and its worth. And then the king said, I must have the bird. Somebody needs to bring this bird to me. And immediately the oldest son came forward and he said, Father, I will find you the bird. And he was given the blessing. He was given the permission, and he set out on his horse, crossed the drawbridge, through the woods and into the clearing, and he looked down, he saw a small fox. He pulled his bow and arrow to shoot the fox, and the fox spoke. The fox said, "Sir, don't shoot me. If you don't shoot me, I will give you a counsel." And the son thought to himself, animals don't talk. He said, "And besides, what could I, a prince, learn from a small creature of the ground?" And he released his arrow, but the fox stiffened his tail and disappeared into the woods. And he rode on. And at night, just as the light was giving way to darkness, he entered a small village. And he rode to the center of the village, and to his right there was an inn. And in the inn he saw people dining, he saw people drinking, he heard music, he saw dancing, and he was drawn to the light. And to his left he saw an inn of darkness, of quiet. But he was drawn to the inn of light, and he entered the inn, and he stayed there that night. And in fact, he stayed there for a long time after. He never left the inn. And then after a long time or a short time, whatever time it takes for them to realize he's not returning, the second son came forward and told his father, "Father, obviously your older son has failed you. Give me the permission, the blessing." And he was given the blessing, and he set out, just as his brother, crossed the drawbridge, through the woods, into the clearing, and there was a fox. And immediately he drew his bow and arrow. The fox spoke. The fox said, "Sir, don't kill me, and I will give you counsel." And like his brother, he thought, animals don't talk. Besides, what could a creature of the ground ever tell me, a prince? And he released his arrow, but the fox stiffened his tail and disappeared into the woods. And then, like his brother, he rode on, and at night, just when light was giving way to darkness, he entered the village of the two inns. And like his brother, he came to the center of the town, and he saw to his right the inn of light, with the dancing, with the music, with the food, with the wine. And to his left he saw the darkness, the quiet of the inn. And like his brother, he was drawn to the inn of light, and he went there and he stayed that night, and he stayed on, never left the inn again. Then after a long time or a short time, whatever time it takes for people to realize that he's not coming back, the youngest son went to his father and he says, "Father," he said, "obviously my two brothers are not returning. Give me the permission." And his father said, "No. Of all my sons, you're the least reliable. You're too young. I will not give you the permission." But he begged and pleaded and pointed out to his father that it was him who had seen the firebird and gotten the feather. So finally, but reluctantly, the father gave him the permission. And like his brothers, he set out, rode out of the castle, through the woods, came to the clearing, and he saw a fox. The fox spoke. The fox said, "Sir, don't kill me. And if you don't kill me, I will give you a counsel." And like his brothers, he thought, animals don't talk. And besides, what could a creature of the ground teach me? But he thought, even so, maybe he will have some advice. So unlike his brothers, he didn't shoot an arrow at the fox. He got off. And he knelt beside the fox. The fox said, "I know what quest you are on, and I can give you guidance." He said, "You're to do this. Today, you ride all day, and at night, you will come to a town, and you will ride to the center of the town, and you will stop your horse between two inns. And to the right, you will see an inn full of light and music and dance, and your two brothers. You're not to go into the inn. To the left, you will see an inn which is dark. You're to go into the inn of darkness. Sleep that night, for you're on a pilgrimage, you're on a quest." He said, "And then in the morning, you will get up. And then you need to ride to a distant kingdom. And you can get there. And when you get there, it'll just be nightfall. And you're to wait. There'll be a castle, and there'll be soldiers, and there'll be many rooms. And you're to wait till midnight. And when all the soldiers are fast asleep, and they will not wake when you walk past them, you're to walk through the castle, through every room. And when you get to the very last room, you will open a door, and there will be the firebird, the great bird of fire, and its beauty will take your breath away. It'll stop your breath." He said, "But the bird will be in a cage made of old sticks and torn pieces of leather, you're to take the cage and the bird and bring it back to your father. But there's one thing. He said, when you turn to leave, you will see behind the door, which you didn't see coming in, a gilded cage of gold and emeralds, which is so beautiful it'll take your breath away. You're not to touch the cage. And the younger son, Prince, thanked the fox, and he rode off. The fox stiffened his tail, disappeared into the woods, and he did as his brothers. He rode into the town, but that night he stopped, but he didn't enter the Inn of Light. He entered the dark inn, and he slept peacefully. And in the morning he got up, and he began to ride towards this distant kingdom, not knowing how long it would take, and the fox appeared. The fox says, this is a very distant kingdom, and it will take you a long time to get there, so abandon your horse, sit on my back, and I will take you there. So he got on the fox's back. The fox stiffened his tail in no time, or whatever time it takes to get to the end of the world. They were there, and it was just night. And it was as the fox said, there was a grand castle and many soldiers, and he waited till midnight when everyone was asleep. And he walked between the soldiers, none of them woke. He walked through the castle, through all the rooms, and finally he got to the room where was the Firebird. He opened its beauty, took his breath away. And the bird was caged in old leathers and sticks. And he picked up the cage to walk back, and his eyes saw the gilded cage, and it took his breath away, and he couldn't resist it. He reached out, and he touched the cage, and immediately the bird began to be agitated and make great noises, and the soldiers woke up, and they came and they grabbed him. They said, because you were arrogant, tried to steal the Firebird, tomorrow you'll be brought before the king, and you will die. And they took him, and they threw him into a deep dungeon, where we're going to leave him temporarily. Okay, you got the story up to now? Okay, that's chapter 1. Okay, the other chapters are a little shorter. Okay. But notice some of the repetitions. A little long time, short time, whatever time, and all this fox stiffening his tail and so on. And just think, what the image of the Firebird. And notice in this story, you'll only know at the end, no femininity has appeared yet. Notice there was a king, he had sons. What about daughters? What about a queen? And so on. They're not there yet, you know. Okay. Now, let's go back. He's in a deep dungeon. He's going to die. So in the morning, they bring him before the king. And the king said, because you tried to steal the Firebird, you will die, and you will die now. He said, my sword will find the space between your neck and your shoulders, but there's one way you can save your life. He said, there exists in this world, in a distant kingdom, something that is more awesome than the bird of fire, and that is the black horse of power. There exists a horse whose power is so great that it's the greatest thing on this planet. He said, and if you could bring me the horse of power, I will give you the Firebird and the gilded cage. He said, but if you don't, you will die. So now choose. So, of course, he chose to save his life. He leaves the castle, but now he's dejected. There are tears in his eyes. He's walking on the road aimlessly, not knowing where to go, when he sees the fox. And he's overjoyed to see the fox, and he sits down and he tells the fox immediately what happened. And the fox didn't exactly offer sympathy. The fox said, I told you not to touch the cage. He said, but because you didn't try to kill me, not all is lost. He said, I'll give you another counsel. He said, you can find the horse of power and you can bring it back, and I will show you how. He said, you're to travel now to a further kingdom that's more distant than this kingdom, and you will get there at night, and there'll be a castle, a larger castle than this one. There'll be more soldiers, and you're to wait to the middle of the night. And then when everyone's asleep, you are to walk through the castle, and beside it, at the end of the castle, there's a stable, and inside of there will be the great horse of power. He said, but he'll be tied up with a bridle made of sticks and old leathers. You're to take the horse of power and bring him back to this king. He said, but there's one thing. He says, when you turn to leave, you will see a bridle whose beauty is not such as you have never seen. You're not to touch the bridle. And then he said, because the kingdom's distant, said, get on my back and I will take you there. And he sat on the fox's back. The fox stiffened his tail, and then in a long time or a short time, whatever time it takes to get to the far, far kingdom, they were there, and it was night. And he waited till the middle of the night. He went through the castle as the fox had directed, with the soldiers, none of them waking as he walked past them. And he opened the door of the stable, and there stood the horse, and its beauty stopped his breath. It was more beautiful than anything and more powerful he had ever seen in his life. But he was tethered with an old bridle of sticks and old leather, and he untied the horse. He began to lead it out, and he saw the gilded bridle, and its beauty took his breath away. But he realized he should obey the fox, and he knew what happened last time. But just as he was leaving, he thought, a horse that's this beautiful shouldn't have a bridle made of old sticks and stuff. It deserves this bridle. And he reached out and he touched the bridle. The horse began to become very agitated, woke all the guards. They came, they took him, and they said, because you tried to steal the horse of power, you'll be brought to the king tomorrow, and tomorrow you'll die. And they threw him into a deeper dungeon than before. Okay. You're all good so far? Okay. Okay, chapter 3. So, then after a long time or a short time, whatever time it takes, before you're brought before a king to be executed, they bring him before the king, and the king was upset. The king was angry. The king was murderous. The king said, because you had the arrogance to try to steal this horse, you will die, and you'll die now. And my sword will find the space between your neck and your head. He said, but there's one thing. You can save yourself. He said, there's one thing on this whole earth, and it's at the end of the earth, that's more valuable than the horse of power, and that is the beautiful princess. If you would go to this kingdom and bring back this beautiful princess, I will give you the horse of power, and I will give you the gilded bridle. He said, but if you don't, you will die. It'll be my sword that kills you. Choose. So of course he chose to live, but now he comes out, and again he's disoriented. He's wandering aimlessly. There's tears in his eyes. He realized he should have listened to the fox, and as he's looking down, he sees the fox. And he tells the fox what happened, and again the fox didn't offer sympathy. He always said, I told you not to touch the bridle. He said, but not all is lost, because you didn't try to kill me. I'll give you yet another counsel. I know where is the princess. I can take you to the princess, and the princess will agree to come with you. She will come willingly, but it's at the furthest kingdom on the planet. He said, and when you get there, there will be soldiers and there will be guards, but if you wait, just at midnight, in the moonlight, the princess comes out to take her bath. To bathe in the moonlight, you're to wait. And when she comes to take her bath, you're to go forward and kiss her. Then she'll come willingly with you, but there's one thing. Okay. She'll want to go back to kiss her mother and father goodbye, but you can't allow that. So he thanks the fox, and the fox said, it takes a long time to get to the furthest place on earth. He said, go on my back, and the fox stiffened his tail, and in whatever time it takes to get to the end of the earth. They were there, the furthest kingdom on this whole planet. And he waited till midnight on a beautiful moon, and the princess came out, and her beauty was such as he had never seen. And she began to this robe to take her bath, and he went forward and he kissed her, and she immediately said, I'll go with you. She said, I'll go with you wherever you go, but there's one thing. She said, I need to go back and kiss my mother and father goodbye. She said, because it's not right. I'm going away for a long time, perhaps forever. It's not right that I should go without kissing my mother and father goodbye. He said, no, it's not allowed. It cannot be. She said, why can't it be? This would be cruel. This would be heartless. He said, it can't be. And then she began to cry. And he was moved by her tears. He said, okay, go. He said, but do it quickly and try not to wake them. Okay. I think you know where this is going. Okay. So the princess goes back in to her mother and father's bedroom. She goes by their father's side, kisses him. He doesn't awake. She comes to the mother's side, kisses the mother, and the mother wakes, and immediately she intuits. She intuits everything. She grabs her, she holds her, wakes the father. They wake the soldiers. They go and find the young prince They say to him, nobody has ever had such arrogance before, and tomorrow you'll be brought to the king, and tomorrow you will die. And they throw him into yet a deeper dungeon than he's ever been in before, and they leave him there, telling him that tomorrow you will die. Okay. Now he's in dungeon 3 already. Okay. You know, usually when you're with a group, these are good times to stop and discuss and so on, but we don't have enough time to get the story finished tonight. Okay. So let's pick him up again. He's in a dungeon. So after a long time or a short time, or whatever time it takes, okay, they bring him before the king, and the king said, because you were arrogant to try to steal my daughter, you will die, and you will die now. And my sword will find the space between your shoulders and your head. He said, but there's one thing you can do. You can save your life. He said, my daughter must indeed marry somebody, but it must be somebody who's worthy. It must be somebody who's like a god. And so I offer you this. There's a mountain 1 mile from here. He said, I'm going to give you 8 days. If you can move that mountain in 8 days, I will give you my daughter gladly. He said, so now choose. So of course he chose to save his life. So he left, and immediately he went to the village and he bought shovels and wheelbarrows and all kinds of axes and picks and ox carts. And for the next 7 days and 7 nights, he worked and worked at this mountain. And when he got to the night of the 7th day, he saw that he hadn't even made a dent. You couldn't even see what he had done. And he realized this is truly over. And as he sat down and realizing his life was now over, he saw the fox. And he explained to the fox. And the fox said, I told you not to let her go back. He said, but now, because you didn't try to kill me, I'll give you one last counsel. He said, just sleep. You are very tired, fall asleep, and we'll see what the morrow will bring. And he fell asleep, and he slept peacefully, and he woke up, and the mountain was gone. And the king was overjoyed. And the king said, you truly are a man who's worthy of my daughter. He said, I give you my daughter. I give you my daughter's hand. Take her back to your father, and you may marry my daughter. She will be your queen. And they're overjoyed, and they're walking back, and they see the fox. And the fox says to them, well, he said, there's a new plan now. He said, this is the plan. He says, the princess is for you. He said, but so is the horse of power, and so is the bird of fire. He said, so what you do is this. You go back to the king who asked for the horse of power and pretend you're going to exchange the daughter for her. And as they line up and they bring out the horse of power, put the princess last. And as you give her an embrace and shake her hand, take her on the horse and you will ride away. And because of the horse of power, no one will catch you. He said, and then you come to the kingdom of the Firebird, and there's 1 hour every day where the Firebird is put into the golden cage, and it's brought out and it's shown to the people. You're to sweep down with the horse of power and to grab the golden cage and the Firebird and then take them both back to your father. They liked that plan. Okay. But he said, now there's one last thing. He said, I've done many things for you, and it's now time that you go on your own, that you won't always see me. He said, but I'm asking you to do this now. I'm asking you to take your arrow, your bow and arrow, and shoot me. Kill me, and then I want you to cut off my paws and keep them in your pockets. And the prince said, we can't do that. What kind of gratitude would this be? And the fox said, no, you don't understand it, but you really need to do this. He said, I can't do it. The fox said, well, then I'll give you one last counsel. He says, don't go near gallows, and don't ever sit on the edge of a well. And he stiffened his tail and disappeared. And now both the prince and princess thought, this is weird. And he thought, the fox, he was good for a while, but these last commands, this is pretty weird. And they talked about this among themselves, but they did as the fox instructed. They went back as if to exchange for the horse of power, and the horse of power was brought with the gilded bridle, and as he's saying goodbye, he grabbed the princess, they rode off, they swept down in the village and grabbed the bird of fire in its golden cage, and now they're riding back to the castle, and they have everything. And their last night, they came to the town of the two inns. And just as they got there, it was morning, they saw there was some commotion on the town square. They stopped and asked, "What's happening?" And they said, "There's to be a hanging. 2 men rode into this town a long time ago, and they're bad men, and now they're to be hung." And he recognized the 2 men as his brothers. So, feeling very gracious, he went to the mayor and said, "Whatever the cost is, if you spare my brothers," and they agreed on a price, and the mayor released the brothers, and now the brothers saddle horses, and they're all riding back to the castle, and there's great joy, and he keeps telling his brothers this story about meeting this fox, and how this fox gave him this wonderful instruction, and how he got the Firebird, and then the princes, and the horse of power, and the brothers kept saying, "Indeed, indeed." And finally they get to a clearing, and they're tired, and they stop. And there's an old well. And his brother said, "Why don't you sit on the edge of this well and tell us that story again?" As he sits on the edge of the well, they run up and they flip him into the well. And as he's falling this deep, deep down to the well, he hears his brothers laughing. And he realizes that he will die in the well. They will take the princes and the horse, and they will go to their father, and he will die in the well. So he's in the bottom of the well. He hears them go off. And he realizes there's no way of getting out. The well was dry, full of leaves, but deeper than any of the dungeons he had been in. As he looks down, he sees the fox. And the fox said, "I told you, okay, to stay away from gallows, and I told you not to sit on the edge of a well, but because you didn't try to kill me," he said, "hang on to my tail." And the fox stiffened his tail and pulled him out of the well. He said, "But now there's a new situation." He said, "Your brothers have turned your father against you. Your brothers have lied. Your oldest brother is to marry the princess. The wedding feast is being prepared even now. And they have sent out lookout. Should you come close to the castle, the soldiers will kill you." He said, "So this is my new counsel." He said, "When you get to the edge of the woods before the castle, there'll be a beggar. And you're to exchange clothing with the beggar, and you put on his beggar clothing, and you give him your royal clothing, and they will not recognize you. You can walk straight into the castle where the feast is. They will take you for a beggar." And he said, "And then see what happens." So he did this. He exchanged clothes with the beggar, and as the feast was being prepared and the musical instruments were strumming up for the wedding, he walks right into the center of this, and nobody recognizes him except the princess. And the princess had grown strangely silent and solemn since she had come to the castle. She had said nothing. And the Firebird refused to sing, and the horse of power refused to eat. And when the princess saw him, she gathered her courage, and she went to the king and told him what had happened. And the horse of power let out a magnificent sound that could echo right through the kingdom, and the Firebird began to sing. And then the king believed the younger prince. And then he said, "There'll be a wedding, but this young prince is going to marry the princess." And then they had a magnificent wedding celebration for 3 whole days. He married the princess, and now they had all the wealth of the Firebird, the horse of power, his father's blessing. And they married, and they lived happily ever after. No, that's not the way the story is. So they married, and they lived happily for a while. They lived happily with the beauty of the bird, with the power of the horse, with the power of their love for each other, with the prince's great beauty. But strangely, they always felt there was a happiness that was escaping them. There was a melancholy they couldn't explain. There was a restlessness that they couldn't fathom. And one day, the prince, walking in that manner, as men walk when they're trying to ponder something they can't ponder, how men walk when they're pondering why they're unhappy and can't explain why. And he's looking down in that way, and he saw the fox. And he was overjoyed. And he bent down. And he told the fox, "I'm not happy. I have everything, but there's something missing." The fox said, "I can tell you what's missing." He said, "Remember, a long time ago, I asked you to do something for me. I asked you to kill me and to carry my paws with you. And he said, I can't do this. The fox said, you must do it. Then, in great sorrow, costing everything to himself, he raised his arrow and he shot it straight into the heart of the fox. The fox began to writhe on the ground and in great pain and agony, and as it was writhing, suddenly it began to transform into something, and it transformed into a young man who had a wonderful countenance. You couldn't even call it handsome. It was just, there was something wonderfully in this young man and his bearing. And the young man looked at him, and the prince said, who are you? Who are you? He said, well, I'm the prince's brother. I'm the brother of the princess, and I'm your brother too. He said, take my hand. And he led the young man to the princess, and he says, I'm bringing you my brother. And she recognized him, and she embraced him, and she said, he will live with us. And then he moved into the castle, and then afterwards, strangely, they lived happily ever after. It's the story, folks. There's different versions of the story. Sometimes I've heard the story told where it's three princesses, the same story, but the oldest princess, youngest princess, and so on. And it's a queen, and there's no masculinity until she finds the prince. I wish I had an hour just to digest some of the story with you. This story has been around for some thousands of years. There's a lot in this story. But just, who's the fox? It's God, And notice, at the end, just to give away some of the stuff, like, they can't be happy until this third person is living with them, And also, like, in its own way, the Paschal mystery that somehow the Christ has to be killed, or even in Buddha. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him, and so on. But also, it would be good to go ask yourself, like, why does he consistently not obey the fox? And notice there's a little progression. The first time, it's just he can't help himself. The second time, it's a rationalization for the horse. The third time, it's sympathy, And the fourth time is, how can I kill you when you've done all this for me? And so on. And then you see there's an inflation as he gets rich. Fox, not that smart, and so on. But anyway, just digest the story. I'm sorry, I'm not a professional storyteller, but that's